Hello, this is the Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Joe Barnhart. With me today is our guest, Jennifer Hancock, visiting East Tennessee from Florida. We're going to discuss the humanist approach to happiness and some practical wisdom. Now, part of the program is if you are an atheist, you aren't alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics, skeptics, doubters, people with open minds, and they meet together and have fellowship and have questions and get along with each other. And this is a show that Jen is going to help us with.
Okay. This is a call-in show. So we're going to go over a few announcements, I guess. And we invite you to start calling in now at the number that's being shown on the screen. There it is. Okay. And get a pen and paper, and we'll give you our email address after the show.
Oh, great.
And mine might show up at some point, so feel free to write it down when you see it.
Yeah, great. We're going to get into her discussion of happiness. She's got a great treatise on this. The Atheist Society of Knoxville will meet at Barley's for the happy hour tonight after the show for conversation, and you are welcome. I want to discuss the God Delusion, the name of a book that some of you have read and some of you haven't. The monthly activities of the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Another interesting group.
Okay, so I talked to them on Sunday. The Rationalists of East Tennessee had a meeting on Sunday. I was there talking to them, and they're a great group of people. They meet the first and third Sunday mornings. They have lectures and roundtables, and the second Sunday afternoon is a book club. And apparently next month they're going to review 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism by Ha-Joon Chang. And you don't need to have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Now, on the fourth Sunday is the Reflections Gathering. This is a potluck afternoon gathering at a member's home. And the topic for July will be opposing concepts of personal independence and its concomitant needs for interdependence. So that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
I'll be in Florida, but it does sound like fun.
Oh, these are very interesting people.
Yes, it was a fun group. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, the discussions are very lively but respectful, and that's what I like. Is it's a vital group and with enormous amount of respect for each other's opinions. If they wanted to analyze communism or capitalism or socialism, they would do it in a very respectful
That's
manner.
why they're the rationalists.
I like that.
The rationalists. They discuss things rationally. It's
So,
very refreshing.
So today we're going to talk about a subject that most people will be, of course, quite interested in, is happiness. It's a theme that goes back long before Aristotle, who wrote great treatises on it, and John Stuart Mill, and my favorite, Jeremy Bentham. But happiness has been you can find some of this in the book of Proverbs. He's trying to wrestle with, in the book of Job, is how is it that a person who lives good turns out to have so much misery?
Right.
And I always admire the courage of this writer. We don't know who wrote it. Just you don't know who wrote a lot of the Bible.
Right.
But he poses, or she poses, the problem. And that's what we're going to do today, is deal with the question of happiness. And let me ask one question right away.
Okay.
How do you say happiness is something around the world. In other words, what would be universal parts of happiness? Say in China?
Right. I get this a lot because the first question when you say you have a book about happiness is, well, how do you find happiness? And some people don't like the term because they don't think we should be trying to go for happiness. They don't think that should be a goal. And when humanists talk about happiness, and this is very important, is we're not talking about pleasure. Although we're not opposed to pleasure. We like pleasure, all right? But pleasure is not the same thing as happiness. And I do YouTube videos, and I ask this question whether or not my understanding of what happiness was the same as everybody else, and everybody pretty much agreed. Pleasure is kind of short-term and more physical in nature, and happiness is a more long-term emotional feeling, more like contentment. Now, Epicurus defined happiness as the absence of suffering. Right? It's as simple as that. It's the absence of suffering. If you're not suffering too much, and notice too much because you're not going to get away from it altogether, then you're basically happy. And I think the problem people have when they're searching for happiness is they don't even know what they're looking for. They've already have it. They've already experienced it, but they think it should be something more intense. And it's really not. It's really more of a calm contentment with who you are and what's going on in your life despite, the hardships that we've got going on right now. Like, we've got a really bad economy right now. People are out of work. My family has had economic hardships and been very stressed out about that. Despite the fact we're making half the money we were before and we're struggling, my husband and I talk to each other and like, yeah, we're pretty happy. We're happy with ourselves and we're happy where we'd like to have more money. But overall, we're happy with what's going on in our life. We're happy with being alive. It's better than the alternative.
Well, so. we know people who have won the lottery.
Right.
And it didn't seem to improve their happiness. Now, I would like to have the chance to see if it would improve my
I would too. I've got lots of plans if I had that much money.
I imagine, from what I heard you say, if you won the lottery, I imagine you would be giving away a good portion of it.
Yeah, I would actually. I mean, I'd obviously get new floors and put in a new dishwasher in my house because I really need one.
I got you.
Maybe retile the bathroom. But yeah, no, if I had $1 million, I'd be donating a portion of it to my favorite charities. Absolutely, Yeah,
that's. I have two brothers, and we both agree if we win, each one of us gets at least $1 million.
Right.
And then the next thing, I would say, maybe another $1 million if you watch after our kids.
Right, you put a trust together for your kids or whatever. But, the fact that I wouldn't be feeling like I need to go out and buy a new car or feeling like I need to buy a new house altogether. What if I had some money, I'd buy a new dishwasher. I mean, how pathetic is that? But on the other hand, it means that I'm actually pretty content with what we have in life.
I like that.
I'm not searching for things I don't really need. And I have a chapter in the book, Keep It Simple, Stupid.
Yeah, hold it up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm pointing to the book on the table.
We're going to talk about humility later, but hold this up now.
This is the book. You can actually buy it. It's a real book. It's at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can get it in the ebook formats, things like that. But there's a chapter on simplicity in the book.
I like that, too. Good.
As long... Not trying to keep up with the Jonesies, not trying to feel like you're stretching yourself financially, really does help you not be stressed about money. I don't need a mansion to be happy.
Yeah, you give away your identity, don't you?
Right. I need enough housing to satisfy me and my family, and I need shelter, and I need to be able to buy food, and I'd like to buy nice food and organic food, right? But at the end of the day, do I need a mansion? Do I need a 3-story house? Well,
let me try this.
Unless I have a big enough family that would be beneficial. And in Florida, it's really not because we have hurricanes, so you really want to be lower anyways. But what are you going to do with the money? Why stretch yourself? Because I think a lot of times people, they're going after possessions because they think, if I just get the iPad too. And admittedly, I want an iPad. I would love to have an iPad too. But getting one isn't going to make me any happier than I am now. Either I'm content with who I am as a person, or I'm not. Right? And if I'm not, no possession in the world is going to help me get more comfortable with who I am as a person and like myself anymore. The iPad's not going to help me. I'd like to have one because it's fun, but not because it's going to make me happy.
I asked a 9-year-old once, what's a car to you anyhow?
A card?
A car.
A car?
Her sister had her car wrecked
Okay.
So they're talking about getting another car. So
Sure.
I said to the 9-year-old, what is a car to you? She said, a car is something to get you where you want to go.
Right, exactly.
And I thought, that kid knows what a car is.
Right, exactly.
And if you want to have clothes in metal,
right.
that's somebody will spend maybe another few $1,000s.
Right, or a few $100,000,
Yeah,
right?
nowadays,
So
yeah. Okay, here we already got a caller.
we're going to see. Nope, we don't have a caller.
We'll keep going. Now, let me ask you this. I think somebody who was raising the critic, in the pursuit of happiness, you sometimes get unhappiness because the pursuit is more important than the enjoyment.
Right. The journey is just as important as the destination in the humanist approach. You know, the humanist approach is that this is the only life we've got. We don't know for sure whether or not we have another life after this, but for sure we know we're alive now, unless it turns out we're in some sort of matrix world, right? But we're pretty sure we're alive now. So what are you going to do with your time? The humanist approach is to say, well, I'm going to try and live my life to the fullest. I'm going to be the best person I can be, the best, most ethical, responsible person I can be, and I'm going to try and live my life to the fullest, and I'm going to try and make the world a slightly better, a better place for me having been here. And so regardless of whether I accomplish my objectives in, you know, getting the car I want, I've accomplished the objective of living my life the way I want to, regardless of what else happens.
So the car is just a means to live your life.
It's icing. It's icing. A nice car is icing. It's not the point.
Do we have a call?
Yeah, we do.
Hello, are you with us?
Nope.
Oh, we lost our caller. Sorry, we got carried away. We'll try to be more respectful.
Right.
Let me ask you about this. In your material, which I thought was very refreshing, you deal with the question of anger in a context of happiness. And all of us, we try to control our anger.
Right.
Because it can be very destructive.
Right.
So talk about that, would you?
You don't act on your anger. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
Okay. Go ahead. Hello? All right. Okay, so anger. Hang up again.
Okay. Anger, go ahead.
So anger is a normal human emotion. We're all going to experience it at some point. The point is that it's really not a good idea to act on your angry emotions. The point of my book wasn't to say, okay, you're going to be happy all the time, because you're not going to be happy all the time. And that's not a realistic goal to have. But as long as you make better decisions, you think about your actions before you take your actions, right? Because your actions have consequences. You can choose actions that are going to maximize the benefit to you and to everybody else.
Yeah.
And so anger, while it's a normal emotion, is not necessarily the best thing to act on. And we'll get back to that in a second. Hello? No. We keep dropping whoever's calling.
Okay. Okay.
So again, you know, it's a good emotion to have. I mean, it's not a good emotion. It doesn't feel good, but it's in our emotional toolkit for a reason. But your decisions made in a state of anger are usually universally really bad. So I caution people and I say, try to get yourself to a more rational place before you decide what to do about your anger, so that you're not making a decision in an irrational state, which anger is, let's face it, irrational. So I tell people, if it's at all possible, try to think compassionately about the person who's made you angry and then make your decision. Hello. Hi. You're finally on.
Okay, great. My name is Rick. Since you were focusing on the humanist approach to happiness, could you give a little bit more of a basis of where the humanist doctrine kind of took hold and came forth? I know a little bit about Thomas More, people of that nature,
Sure.
And kind of talk about maybe the effect that it really has on today's church, both Protestant and Catholic doctrinal thought, and maybe a little bit about the effect that it probably had on our founding fathers, since we hear so much about our founding fathers and
Sure.
what they supposedly believed in and everything. So,
Okay.
but just kind of expound on that.
Sure, sure. Well, humanism arises in every culture and in every time. That's the first thing you need to know. Wherever there are humans that take time to think for themselves about what sort of person they want to be in the absence of their religious faith, they tend to come up with something very similar to humanism. So you see humanism in the teachings of Confucius. You see it in the teachings of Mo Tzu in China. You see it in Carvaka and Buddhism in India. And you also see it in the teachings of ancient Greece, and to name a few. The humanism Rick is talking about, the word humanism started being applied in the Italian Renaissance. And it referred to scholars of the humanity. A scholar of the humanity is a humanist. And it's still to this day, humanities scholars are known as humanists in the academic world. Starting with the Reformation, when people started to break away from the Catholic Church, they usually invoked humanism as their right to do so, because humanism is an individualist philosophy wherever it arises. It's anti-arbitrary authority. And so it was very useful to people who were rebelling against the Catholic Church for the wide variety of reasons people wanted to rebel against the Catholic Church, to claim that they had the right to interpret the Bible for themselves, that they could read the Bible for themselves, and they had the right to do that. And then you start getting into the Reformation humanists and the Enlightenment humanists. But I'm what's called a modern humanist. So the tenets of humanism are basically this. The current definition of humanism by the American Humanist Association.
Wait a minute, we got a note here. Randy called in, and so we're going to ask Randy to try again.
Okay.
We got a note.
Rick, I'm going to take you off so that Randy can get in,
right.
but I'm going to continue talking about what you asked about. So anyways, the modern definition of humanism is from the American Humanist Association, which was founded in the 1930s. And they say that humanism is a progressive philosophy of life that, without supernaturalism, affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good of humanity. So modern humanism is without supernaturalism. Now, how you get there, you could be methodologically non-religious, or you could be nominally religious, or you could be an atheist, or it's an apatheist like I am, and you can still get to that point. But the point of the philosophy has always been that as an individual, I'm going to make a choice to lead an ethical life of personal fulfillment that aspires to the greater good of humanity. I'm going to live my life to the fullest, love other people, and try to make the world a better place. And that's been the hallmark of humanist thought everywhere. It's only been recently that the non-religious element has come to define modern humanism, but the techniques have always been employed by people regardless of faith. Just nowadays, if someone's without religion and they choose this lifestyle, they're known as a humanist. If they're with religion and they choose this lifestyle, they're humanistically inclined, or they're approaching their faith humanistically.
Okay. I think where I would differ with you on this is on, I don't tie humanism in with either atheism or theism.
Right. It's beyond that.
But I don't want to die over a word. The principles.
I hope not.
The Golden Rule, for example,
right,
is pretty well spoken in the Hebrew Bible. You find it, of course, Jesus talks about, and I think you would say Jesus probably was not an atheist.
No, he wasn't.
Okay, now you like to make him one, maybe.
No. What I said was modern humanism is currently defined.
That started about what, 15 what?
The turn of the century, 1900.
Okay, now
right around then is when it started to be a non-religious thing.
I think humanism as a tradition.
The humanism as a tradition
is much older than.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So,
and I have another book coming out that'll go into that history, and I also talk about that history in a video series I did that's available on YouTube for free. History of Humanism. It goes back much longer, but modern humanism is without supernaturalism. However you get there, it's defined as being a secular philosophy.
A group of, I had a good talk with Paul Kurtz on this. He invited me up in New York. We were, in fact, when he was doing his manifestos. And he's a secular humanist.
Right.
But he distinguished secular humanism from what we call fundamentalist atheism.
Right. Well, atheism isn't about humanism at all.
Okay,
it's about non-religion.
That's my, well, okay, now, so could a person be religious and a humanist?
Nowadays, we would refer to such a person as being humanistically inclined. They would be approaching their faith in a humanistic manner, and that's very, very common. It didn't, like, during the Renaissance and the time of our founding, it wasn't used, the term wasn't used that way.
Okay,
someone was a humanist if they embraced these values, regardless.
I'm a lot older than you. And I remember the word humanism. I know some television preachers have taken the word humanism because basically they're not humanists in their ethics.
Right, exactly.
And
if someone's bashing humanism, it means they're not humanist.
I want to be accurate about this. They want to then identify humanism with atheism.
They're not the same thing at all.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get at. So that a person could, would you agree that a person could be a Methodist minister and a humanist?
Only if they were a non-religious Methodist minister, and that happens. There's people that go into the ministry that do not believe in the existence of God or the supernatural.
Now we know where you and I differ.
All right, now the term humanism as it's currently defined is without, no, not as I define it, as it's defined by the American Humanist Association, and is without supernaturalism.
That's very much
all right?
like these.
But being without supernaturalism in and of itself is not what makes a person a humanist.
There are religious groups who capture a word.
Right.
And this is what this particular group of humanists have done. They've captured the word for themselves and defined it for themselves. But the word has a longer tradition.
Sure.
If they want to use the word with a capital H for themselves.
Well, they talk about it as being modern humanism. They absolutely distinguish it from the forms of humanism that existed before. Modern humanism is how it's talked about. And that lets you know there's an older tradition to it.
But it's not. It has nothing to do with religion.
Religion, to me, as a practicing humanist, is
to this group.
No, it's without supernaturalism.
Without, so okay, hey, we got a good call. Let's see.
All right.
Well, they haven't come in yet.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
It's without supernaturalism. So, however you get to with that, that's modern humanism is without supernaturalism.
The golden rule, is that part of the humanist tradition or not?
Oh, sure. In the various ways it's been phrased by the various traditions over the years,
well,
sure.
You see my point.
Yeah.
Buddhism and Christianity. Here we go.
Hello?
Go.
Hello?
We got a caller. Go, please.
You're on.
Yes, this is Rick again.
Oh, hi, Rick.
Hey, good, Rick. We're sorry. Go.
I think what the gentleman was trying to get at now was that basically there's this refusal maybe on the part of modern humanists to not claim the essence of their thought pattern. You mentioned it at the beginning, but you gave it a passing thing saying, well, it started during the Renaissance and with a group of Italians who kind of maybe they found their way to England and all that good stuff. But in that tradition that they founded, these were religious people.
Sure.
These were people who believed in divinity,
right.
divine essence, and that was the moving power, if we will, that helped them define their humanism,
right,
as it was defined then.
Right.
So that tradition comes from a religious background. It needs to be honored and admitted to openly.
Right.
Even the atheist wants to step in there, because even an atheist to me would be a religious person to some degree, because they say, well, I'm non-religious, but in you're saying you're non-religious, you do things that are, if you look at it, it breaks down the same way a person that has a religious background, they do things in the same way.
Right,
Ask them what the essence is of their moral code.
Okay, let me deal with that.
Let me point out.
Go ahead. Mention that which they cannot
Historically, there have been what we would consider modern humanists throughout history. Carvaca was one. There's a guy from the 9th century Islam who rejected all supernaturalism and espoused a form of humanism at that time.
And those that actually did the supernatural, the Sufis, have been thoroughly,
Yes.
You know, they were thoroughly put under. You know, they were, and they're not hard, they're barely recognized today.
Right.
And they were very non-doctrinal.
Right. And what I would say,
they were just taking the essence of what Islam was.
Right. And when we get back to humanism, I don't think I'm rejecting the religious tradition throughout history at all. What I think is important about humanism is the value system and the ethics and the choice of how you choose to live your life. You know, that I'm without supernaturalism is kind of secondary. Even if there was a God, for me, I find the concept of God irrelevant to how I choose to live my life. Now, that's actually probably more radical than saying I don't believe, but to me, the concept is not even relevant to how I'm choosing to live.
Deism is.
Well, no, deism is a belief.
It's a slippery slope. You do not admit that it's a slippery slope.
Virgilius Firm has a book with 100 definitions of religion. And if we took the time, we could come up with probably at least 50 definitions of religion.
Well, and there's people...
You don't solve a problem by definition. You waste a lot of time with a definition. We see that some of things we mean by religion, by humanism, is at least the golden rule, what you dealt with compassion.
Right, ethics, responsibility.
When an anthropologist goes into another culture, the first thing, the principle of an anthropologist is try to understand why their activities and their practices and their beliefs have a meaning to them, not a meaning to the anthropologist, but to the people themselves. And that's why it's called a discipline.
Right.
Because they have to listen and learn and not go in and say, all you stupid people hold to other views that are not mine.
Right.
And therefore it must be superstition. In fact, Darwin had to learn the hard way when he was doing the trip. He had trained as a minister, not very well, but he had trained because his father wanted to be a minister.
Right. Well, even in the modern humanist movement, we can't even agree if it's a philosophy or a religion. I mean, the American Ethical Culture Society considers a non-theistic religion. Most people in the American Humanist Association and the Council for Secular Humanism consider it a philosophy. Ultimately, I don't think the definition of what it is matters as much as the approach and the practice to it.
That's a good point.
Because, again, what's important is it's a choice on how to live your life ethically, responsibly, compassionately. The fact that modern humanists, people who apply the word humanist to themselves, are either academics in the humanities or they're non-religious people who have made a choice to live ethically, compassionately, responsibly. However you want to define non-religious, right?
No, there's a third group of religious, and many of them are theistic humanists. I mean, I know, apparently you don't know these ministers, but I do. And they will call themselves humanists and will not give up the word to those who define it in terms of non-religion. And I think I owe them the respect of their tradition and not hijack it for my ideology, you see. I'd simply say, okay, there's definition 1, 2, and 3. And the meaning of a word is the way people use it. It's not my job to tell people what the definition is. In fact, if you look in a dictionary, you will find definition 1, 2, and 3 often on just ordinary language. And that's all I'm trying to say is when I was talking with Paul Kurtz, whom I greatly respect, he had the fortitude to say and the honesty to say he was a secular humanist. And I always respected that because he knew that he differed with some religious humanists, but he didn't try to hijack the word just for his group, because he knew he had commonality. In fact, he had a very good friend named Bob Alley, who was from a Southern Baptist tradition. And the last time I talked to Paul Kurtz, a secular humanist, he said, I miss Bob Alley, who had died, because they had so much in common. Now, Bob Alley was the son of the editor of a Southern Baptist journal.
We got another caller. Hello? Hello, you're on.
Please go on.
Hello, Jen. Question for you. My name is Phil.
Hi, Phil.
Would you explain how you think the world or whether the world would be a better place if people practice humanist values than if they practice biblical values.
I guess it depends on what people consider to be biblical values, because people differ in what they think biblical values are, and I'm certainly not a theologian to discuss that. I do think the world would be better off if people generally said, I'm going to be a compassionate, responsible, ethical person, and I'm going to try and deal with the world I find myself in on the world's terms, as opposed to hoping that the world works a different way than it apparently does. I'm a real big believer in reality-based decision-making when it comes to solving the problems in our lives, as opposed to searching for supernatural solutions, although I understand why people do that, and if that's what floats their boat, that's fine with me. The example I give when I talk about this is, if you have a sick child, do you take them to the doctor to try and get some help for them, or do you pray for a healing? And obviously taking them to the doctor is kind of the human approach, and therefore a humanist approach, because humanists believe we have the ability to solve our problems. The praying is a religious approach, and that's fine too. Most people do both. Yeah. Without any problem whatsoever. So I don't think the humanist techniques and approaches are in any way incompatible with religious belief at all.
Well, how about in the situation where I think Christians and Jews, for instance, are bound by the Bible, and so I think they would be bound not only by compassion for other people, but also by obedience to certain edicts that are in the Bible, which have not really, it seems, too much to do with compassion, and this causes wars sometimes. Mm-hmm. Can you explain how you think humanism might be a better philosophy to avoid wars than religion is?
Sure. Humanism is not dogmatic whatsoever. So when a humanist reads the Bible, for instance, we're not reading it literally, we're not interpreting it literally. We're looking at it as we would pretty much any other piece of literature to see what we can learn about what it is to be a better human being in there, what kind of moral values we can glean about how to be a better person for ourselves. And I think a lot of the problems we have arise when people take whatever they hold, whatever view they hold dogmatically, and then they stop being flexible and they stop being okay with other people disagreeing with them. And I think that causes a lot of conflicts. And so for me, the benefit of humanism in those situations is, by definition, we're rejecting any dogmatic approach, even within ourselves.
And I think the key word there was literal. You don't view the scriptures literally, and I think that's a very key difference there. Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Okay, now,
sorry.
Let me be fair to even evangelical Christians. Most of them that I know do not say they take the Bible literally.
Right.
People who criticize them often say that because they don't read the evangelicals. They just hear about them on television. I was a member of the Society of Biblical Literature for many years, and I heard many good papers in biblical studies. We never asked the question whether they were atheists, Buddhists, Hindus, Christians. That usually in reading the papers you couldn't tell.
Right.
I happened to have been elected president of the Southwest Division of the American Academy of Religion, and those who were in it knew me well. I had some atheist friends, I had Buddhist friends. It was a Southern Baptist who nominated me. Now the point is that we realize we've got too much ignorance, and we can't afford to have a monopoly on it.
Right.
And so we have to learn from each other, and no one group has. Now, some of the most dogmatic people I have ever met in my life are atheists.
Yeah,
some of the most dogmatic
I'd agree with that.
are Baptists.
But what my dad always says is, no group corners the market in stupidity.
I love it.
All right, so it doesn't matter what you believe about God, the universe, and everything. if you think you're right and everybody else is wrong, you're going to be a jerk about it. And if you are open to the fact that you might be wrong, you're going to be a lot more humble in how you approach learning from other people. And, you know, to me, that's the key, is not being dogmatic in what it is you believe or don't believe, and understand that the people you're interacting with, by and large, are probably going to be good people, even if they don't believe the same thing as you.
Yeah.
I honestly don't care what other people believe or don't believe. It's not relevant to me. What's relevant is how they actually behave. And I talk about this in my book, that in the chapter called the True Holy Trinity, these are the character traits that really matter. This is how you tell if you're dealing with a good person or not. If they're either ethical, compassionate, and responsible, or they're not. If they're missing one of these things, they're not. You're going to have problems with them. Whether they say they're a good Christian or not, I don't care. They're a good person or not. That's what matters to me. That's what matters. That's what matters to me. And I talk about, you know, for those of you who are considering what this book is about, the reason I talk about this is a lot of times you'll come. The subtitle of the book is Practical Wisdom.
That's what I like.
Right. So I talk about what it looks like when you meet someone who's really, really honest, but not responsible and maybe not compassionate. What does it look like so you can recognize them? Because even if they're really, really honest, and people will use honesty as a way to hide their other flaws, right? But if they're not responsible, you're going to have problems with them, right? If they're not compassionate, you're going to have problems with them. If they're honest but not compassionate, and they're responsible, which that's Hitler. That describes Hitler in a nutshell.
That's good.
Right? I mean, the man, he never lied to anybody about what he wanted to do.
Would you say this is what integrity means? It's integration.
It's the integration of these three character traits.
And the loss of integrity is to separate these.
Right. I think that's a great way to describe that. But to me, that's what really matters. You know, I grew up in a non-religious family, a Freethought family. I was raised by a Freethought family. My mom tells me she was raised that way. My dad, I know, was raised that way. So that puts me basically third-generation freethinker. But my extended family was Orthodox Jewish on one side and devout Catholic on the other. And I was always taught it doesn't matter what someone believes. It doesn't matter. It matters whether they're a good person. And this is one of the things I really like about humanism, is we don't judge other human beings on arbitrary things. We don't care what you look like. We don't care what your skin color is. We don't care what your gender is. We don't care what clothes you're wearing right now. You're either a good person or you're not. Done.
I think,
and so we judge each human we meet as an individual human and not by the lowest common denominator of whatever class they might be in.
Karen Armstrong, who's done quite a bit of work in religion, I think would agree with very much what you had. She's a former nun, but says she has rediscovered religion, but it's not her. I mean, what she means by religion is finding what she thinks. This would be my interpretation. She believes that as she restudies these religions, she finds a lot of humanistic principles.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it amounts to.
Right.
I think.
You know, it's funny when you look at the history of...
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Now, I know Richard Dawkins, I believe, makes fun of this, but Dawkins sometimes has a lot of insight. Sometimes he just misses it. But that's true of me and you. But love your enemy. Okay, now you could say right away, okay, another example of superstitious nonsense. You can't go around loving your enemies. Or you can say, maybe when a guy said this in the Middle East where they had Oriental hyperbole, they were trying to get out something very important.
Right.
That is to say, try to turn an enemy into a friend.
I would also say it comes back to anger, that if you're trying to deal with someone who's in conflict with you, that you're not going to make good decisions about how to handle that situation in a state of anger. We have another caller.
Good.
Hello?
Go.
You're on. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Paris Miller.
Hi, Paris. How you doing? I love that name.
And again, it goes in a novel, doesn't it?
Exactly. What's your question or comment?
Well, my comment is about the Buddha. And then what Buddha said were the three poisons that were in our world. And he said anger, greed, and ignorance. And anger needs to be turned to compassion, and greed turned to generosity, and ignorance into enlightenment. And I'd like to say that I think that ignorance is the most important problem that we have, because we'll all be reduced to the lowest common denominator that we have in the world. Mm-hmm. And there are so many people on the earth right now that we're choking it to death. And we've got to live together here, and we've got to find some kind of solution to the problems that we've got.
I agree.
Yeah, the word ignorance is a cognate of the word ignore.
Right.
And we get ignorant of people when we don't listen. And you and I know it's a lot easier to talk than to listen. I taught for 46 years.
Sure.
And my wife's a counselor, and she says it's harder work. And she's right.
Oh, yeah,
it's much harder to listen, to say, that person is probably making sense if I can put it together, you know.
Right.
And that's why it is a discipline.
It is. It absolutely is. And going back to the Buddha, you know, one of I have a blog.
I'm going to say bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. I have a blog, The Humanist Approach to Happiness, or Happiness Through Humanism, and I had a section on, you know, turning anger into compassion, because it's so critical to making better decisions in the moment, that you are able to think about the situation in a more compassionate way, so that you not that you accept the transgressions that occurred, and not that you accept the injustice that's making you mad,
I like that,
but that you come to a better place where you can make a better decision that's going to lead to a better outcome, not just for you, but for everybody. And if we're making decisions out of anger, that never really works well. And you absolutely can turn your anger into compassion. And there's a really great essay that I linked to by a Buddhist named Thupta Gen, I think, about that, because he talks about that in a much better way than I ever could.
Yeah, he's in that Hinayana tradition of Buddhism. That's
right,
very
exactly.
Good psychology.
And Buddha was preaching a form of humanism.
Yes, he was.
Absolutely. It's very compatible. And a lot of the teachers, you know, even Jesus is thought to be, he was teaching a form of humanism. You know, we didn't have the word at the time, right?
Love your neighbor as yourself. I mean,
right.
That's not bad.
Even when I was growing up.
The first thing, love your neighbor as yourself, presupposes self-love.
You have to have that. But, you know, even when I was growing up, we didn't use the word humanist to describe being a good person. It's just, this is how you live your life. It didn't need a word.
We even use the word common sense. And part of that means common sense means it's common consensus with your neighbors.
Yep. So there you go. So what else in the book do we want to talk about? Let's talk about the book.
Well, let's talk about hope.
Okay.
How does hope figure in with happiness? I mean, that's a big factor.
Optimism.
Expectations.
Expectations and optimism. I think you have to have a sense of what you'd like to accomplish to even begin to think about trying. Because if you're going to live in pessimism, it doesn't matter what I do, it's not going to get any better anyway, then you're not going to do anything, and we're going to be stuck in the status quo. A big part of humanism has always been this idea of human agency, that humans have the ability to change the situations of our lives and in the world to a certain. There's some things we can't change, but there's a lot that we can. For instance, if there's a hurricane bearing down on you, you can get out of the way of the hurricane. All right? It's not necessarily God's will that you stay in one place and allow the hurricane to hit you. You can go to a shelter. So this idea that there's something you can do as a human is absolutely central to the humanist thought, and it's always been central to the humanist thought, that we have this ability. But you have to believe you have the ability to even try. Now, the humanist viewpoint is, because we believe we have the ability, we therefore have a responsibility to act, because it's simply immoral to allow an injustice or suffering to continue if you have the ability to alleviate it.
Would you say almost all cultures have had to develop this just to survive?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
My mother was an old mountain woman, and she had an expression, take hold. Well, she didn't have a lot of formal education. But she understood what was going on, and she meant you take hold of the situation. Right. And in her view, see what you think of this. The only way you can get a kid to have self-respect is to hold that kid responsible for his activities, because that means his actions count for something.
His actions have consequences. The sooner kids learn their actions have consequences, the better off they are going to be. And that's actually the very first thing I talk about in the book. The very first chapter is that your actions have consequences, so choose your actions wisely. And I have had people write to me and say that simple as obvious as that is, a lot of people don't understand it, and they're just acting without thinking about the consequences. And the key part of my book is your actions have consequences, so choose your actions wisely. And I apply that to everything from drinking to dating to relationships to sex. How do you get self-esteem? How do you be yourself? Be yourself. That's the key to happiness. How do you actually go about being yourself? It's not that easy.
I wish this course could be in every high school.
So, that's really the key. And if you don't understand that your actions have consequences, you're not going to necessarily take the time to think through your consequences wisely. Why is it a good idea to drink responsibly, for instance? It's not just something we say. There's really concrete reasons why drinking responsibly is probably going to lead to better outcomes than if you drink irresponsibly, right?
Brought up what you mentioned much earlier. If you're going to have some happiness or pleasure now,
right,
you can do it, but what about pleasures and happiness later?
Exactly.
So it has consequences.
When I first started promoting the book, the friendly atheist, Herman Mehta, put some excerpts of my chapter on sex on his website. And almost everybody wrote in and wanted to get a copy of the book because we were giving away a free copy of the book. But there were some people who said I was sex negative. And they actually tried to argue that getting an STD was not a bad consequence of having sex, because STDs are treatable. And I'm thinking, A, it costs money to treat it, B, there's an emotional impact of getting an STD, and C, you just limited the number of people who are going to want to have sex with you in the future. So to me, that's a consequence,
Yeah.
And you can treat it, but it's still a consequence.
That's like saying get your head busted because you can get stitches.
Right, so it's not that I'm saying don't do these things. Every one of these decisions people have to make for themselves, whether they're willing to take the risk or the consequences of their actions or not, but they should at least be thinking about the potential consequences and whether they could handle the worst if it happened before they decide to go get drunk and then drive their car.
Exactly.
Right. Now, being drunk and driving your car is not going to guarantee you're going to get in an accident, but it will increase the likelihood you get. It's going to increase the odds. Same thing, not drinking and driving is not going to guarantee you're not going to get in an accident, but it's going to decrease your odds. And at the end of the day, that's about the best we humans can do, And if we're not going to even take that on ourselves, take that responsibility for ourselves, then we're leaving ourselves to the whims of fate. And as a humanist, I'm not willing to do that. I know I can do. Comes back to human agency.
In some ways, that's not being human.
Right. I know I can change the odds. So why would I not want to do that? But throughout the world today, you find groups of people that absolutely refuse to believe that they have the ability to change the course of their lives. One of the reasons AIDS is still running rampant in Africa is people don't believe they can protect themselves from it. Right? And since they don't believe they can protect themselves from it, they don't do anything to protect themselves from it. And part of that is education, but
a lot of it is education.
A lot of it is education,
and availability to the
right.
Freedom is not an abstraction. It takes means.
Right.
You can't be just free without the means to be free.
Right.
And part of that is information. And as our caller said, ignorance of this is a major source of agony.
Right. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And you're free to choose whatever path to happiness you want to try, but you also should be aware that all paths are not going to lead to happiness. Some will, and some won't. You got to choose what you can handle and what you can't handle. And that has to, at the end of the day, you have to have a sense.
But we've got a little bit. You mentioned, I have a friend who raised a real good point, by the way, Sunday. On some systems we live in are not happiness promote. Ted Lawless brought this up.
Okay.
Some systems we live in don't promote happiness, even though individuals within the system are trying to get happiness.
Sure.
And Ted is a person trying to promote peace among nations and groups, and I think this is a good point. Sometimes we have to work not just on the individual, but try
Right.
to make the system more conducive
Right.
to people making their choices and their responsibilities. I
Right.
like your 3 points very much.
Right. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Founding Fathers went after a democracy is that, you know, if you're not free to make those choices for yourself, then you're not free to pursue your happiness.
Yeah.
And everybody does that differently. And freedom is key. But you can't be free without also taking control through personal responsibility. And I think this is the mistake a lot of young people make specifically, is that they think in order to be free they need to skirt responsibility.
Yeah.
But if you can't skirt your responsibility, because what they're trying to say is, I don't want to suffer the consequences of my actions. That's what people are actually saying when they say, I don't want to be responsible. They want to say, I want to do what I want to do without the consequences. And that's not reality.
That's not
The
reality.
reality is you're going to have consequences whether you want them or not. So if you understand that, you can choose.
You're going to have consequences no
Whether
matter
you
what.
want, so you might as well choose
the best you can.
exactly to have better consequences rather than less good consequences. And at that point, when you make that choice to be responsible, it changes everything.
My wife
It
got up this
changes
morning with a
everything.
backache, because she hurt her back or something, and just yesterday, and she got up, and she's, you know, but she says, I have hope, and she says, when is my next appointment with a physical therapist? You see, she said, I've got to do something about
Right.
it. You see, and I think this is what you're talking about is that you have a society that allows choices, but if you make choices, you have to make them, and you have to make them in light of the consequences.
That's right. That's right.
And the one reason I think a democracy is so important, it says you are not bound to the particular group. You can choose the group that is going to support you.
Right.
And I think that's what church-state separation meant.
Oh, yeah.
You get your support group rather than you get my support group.
Right. Right.
Because you're different
That's right.
from me, but you still have to have a group
Sure.
to have. I mean, people are social.
Right. Right.
And well, let's see. We don't. How much?
Oh, we
more
have
time?
7 minutes left. It
Oh,
looks
good.
like.
We got more. We got more time. But let's.
What else did you like in my? Tell me. What
Okay,
else did
now
you
you-
like in my book?
Well, I like the whole book. The reason I like it so much is it is very practical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a philosophy is no good unless it's got nuts and bolts.
Right.
You don't just have a car.
Right.
You've got, you know, the dashboard and the motor, and the motor's got parts, and that's what this is about. Is you put parts to it. Now, you mentioned the word humble,
Sure.
which often you associate with the religious tradition, but that's a long tradition. The word talk about humility is over against humiliation.
Huh?
Okay. Well, I get this from your book.
All right. Okay.
I once heard, I was talking to an artist, and he was complaining about his work of art. I said, what do you know? That's a great work of art. You're just the artist. Right. So what do you know? I read the book.
I think being humble from the humanist perspective is understanding that you don't have all the answers.
That's good.
Right. We know we might not be right. And this comes back to the Freethought. I have a whole chapter on Freethought. It's called The Rule of Threes, and it doesn't just talk about the importance of Freethought. It has practical lessons on how to start practicing Freethought if you've never done it before. But the big part of that is acknowledging to yourself whatever it is you're thinking, however right you think you are, you could very well be wrong. And if you are, it's really important to know that. All right, we have another caller. Hello? Hello?
Have we got a caller? Speak up, would you?
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, what's your feeling about kind of the quick fix in this day and age of taking antidepressants so commonly?
Having been through a period of time, I've been stalked, and I lost a child. And, you know, so I know a bit about depression. I know about being so terrified I can't even get out of the house. It's a struggle to get out of the house. I am not going to tell anybody that if they need an antidepressant to get through a period of their life that they shouldn't do it. I just think, you know I've been helped by professional psychologists and therapists who have helped me cope with the stresses I was under when they were too much for me to bear. And I'm a big fan of them. Am I a big fan of being drugged? No. But on the other hand, I've had to take sleeping pills to get me to sleep because of the anxiety I was feeling over the loss of a child. So, you know, everybody's different. What they need is different. Some people have imbalances in their brain that can be corrected by modern medicine. So, you know, I don't think anybody should be living in a state of deep depression that's even medical or just situationally brought on. There's stuff you can do to get help for that. And you owe it to yourself to go out and find that help, because the last thing you want to do is just live with the status quo if the status quo is crap. There are people who can help you. There are absolutely people who can help you.
People can, yeah.
You know, and trust me, I was at a point where I was having trouble getting out of the house because of the stalking. And I was waking up, the first thing that would happen is I'd have a panic attack, thought I was going to die from vomiting and my own hyperventilation, and then I would try to calm myself down so I could get out of bed and take a shower and get on with the day. I'd have a panic attack sometime during the day, and then right before I fell asleep, I'd have another panic attack. I've been panic attack free for years, and it's thanks to the help of a professional therapist. Period. Done. Get help if you need it. Get help if you need it.
Thanks very much. Thank you for this forum.
Yeah, that's a good friend. I had a psychology teacher say that most of his help came from friends. If you have good friends who are good listeners and who don't tolerate too much BS,
right,
then they can be of a lot of help to you, and they're not that costly.
They're not that costly, but there are situations where you need the help of a professional.
Yeah.
You know, I was in a place where I absolutely needed professional help, and within 3 months, I was panic attack free. The techniques she taught me on breathing, they were very practical things I could do to help get my stress under control so that I wasn't suffering the way I had been. You know, there was breathing techniques. The best advice she gave me is, look, if you're terrified of cemeteries, don't walk past the cemetery. Take the long way around. You'll get to where you're going, but you're not going to trigger your panic attack by walking past the cemetery.
This is a good point.
You know,
a depression often comes by putting yourself in a depressing situation.
Sure, and sometimes you can't help it. Things happen.
That's why other people can help you bear through that period.
And for most things that are average, you know, you can get through on. Like, I didn't need to go to a therapist to deal with the depression and the loss of my child. All right, I had what I needed around me for that. But with the stalking, because it was so extreme and so psychotic what was happening, I needed a professional to help me. So, you know, everybody's different.
Now, that's a good example of humility, it seems to me. Humility, in that sense of trying to see yourself in a perspective that's realistic.
Sure. And
saying, okay, here is where I need help.
Right.
You don't do surgery on yourself.
Right.
This is just a splinter.
Right.
And sometimes you need major therapy psychologically.
Sure.
And doing it on yourself alone sometimes
and
is dangerous.
I can tell you right now, no friend would have been able to teach me the skills I needed that the therapist was able to teach me. They, you know, and I didn't need drugs for it. I just needed 3 or 4 techniques to help me learn how to cope with what was going on, so that I could get past it. And you know, so I totally recommend it. If you're having troubles and your friends aren't able to help and you can't do it on your own, find help, because it's out there and you can get it for free. We have about a minute left. So let's follow up with the book. I'm going to pitch it myself. It's The Humanist Approach to Happiness, Practical Wisdom. It's in hard copy. It's in ebook format. You can buy it just about anywhere you want to buy it. It's written for teens and young adults to provide the practical information they need to learn how to navigate and make choices for themselves.
So tell them how to go on television.
Wide range of issues.
To get it.
I'm on the web at jen-hancock.com, and you're seeing my email address. The email address, excuse me, there's a bug flying around, has the web address there. There's a link to the book. There's a link to the videos I talked about. And if you sign up for my mailing list, you'll get my next ebook for free, which is just a short little ebook on humanism, the history of humanism, and things like that.
So get the email again now.
jen@hancock.com, and that's also my website. And the book is The Humanist Approach to Happiness, Teens, Young Adults. If you're a parent with a teen or know someone who is, this is a great book to start the conversation about drugs and drinking and sex and how to make better decisions in all aspects of their lives.
Yeah, you got a good chapter on learning from your elders.
Oh, yeah.
Being an elder, I thought that was a great chapter.
Excellent. So 20 seconds left. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on, everybody, and thanks for making my trip to
But you've got to learn to
Knoxville.
express yourself more.
Yeah, I'm kind of quiet. Yeah.
Maybe
Wallflower.
Well, thank you a lot.